Welcome to Belief, Being, and Beyond with your host, Granddaughter Crow.
So I have been checking you out all over YouTube, social media, your website, your page at Llewellyn, all of your books, all of your working, and I am just so honored to have you here as a guest on Belief, Being, and Beyond podcast, Shelley.
It is my honor to be with you, Dr. Joy. You're amazing. I love your book. I'm so happy that you're doing this show. I think it's phenomenal, and I'm just honored to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
I have an amazing guest with me here today, Dr. Shelley Kaehr. So, for over 2 decades, she worked with thousands of people from around the globe, helping them to achieve greater peace and happiness within their lives. She is a renowned past life regressionist and one of the world leading authorities on energy healing and mind body medicine. So her award-winning books have been translated into multiple languages around the world. Shelley believes we all have the power to rewrite our stories and create the life of our dreams. So, look what I have.
Thank you.
I have your newest release that will be released on what, June 8th, 2024?
Yes, that's right.
So it's right around the corner, or if you're listening to this in the future, it just happened. Ancestral Healing Energy, a guidebook. Okay, the first thing I got to say is that is something that is close to my heart is the ancestors. As as a person from a Navajo line, I was taught to respect the ancestors. I love working with my ancestors. I connect with my ancestors in guided meditations unless they come into my dreams and all of that. So, ancestral work. So, I love this topic. So, first question that I have for you is so in 2021, you had a best-selling book called Heal Your Ancestors to Heal Your Life. And in that book, you introduce this concept around genealogical regression, which just sounds so fascinating. I would love to hear more about what is genealogical regression.
It's something that I developed back in the early 2000s, actually, when I was really pretty new in my hypnotherapy practice. My main goal was to guide people into past life regressions. And then what would happen is when I was working with some clients, there was just a feeling that before we could ever begin to go into a past life experience, there needs to be some healing that's happening with the family. I'm sure none of our beautiful listeners out there have ever had any challenges with their families before, but believe it or not, it does happen to some of us. So I take people on guided imagery journeys in their mind. So instead of guiding them in the past life, I took them into a space where they would meet with the higher selves or the soul essence of their parents, mother, and father, and have a healing conversation. And the reason for that is because, some people, again, are having a lot of challenges with parents. Maybe they either don't know their parents, they were adopted, or there's been such horrible or challenging situations they can't deal with them, or maybe the parents have passed on. So we're really trying to contact not the person who had behaviors, et cetera, in the current life here, but more of the soul essence so that we can have a conversation with them, receive like maybe an apology, have a conversation about how we can move forward from here. Because again, it's just obviously it's going to be the beneficiary is the recipient of who, the person who's going through the journey. So in that space, then I started getting, okay, well, hey, mom and dad, does anybody's family need a healing? And let's say mother says, yes, my side of the family needs a healing today. So I developed this process then where we float, instead of floating out into past lives, we're going to float over incidences and things that happen to the ancestors. And so we would float over time to things that happen, let's say, to mother's lineage. And I'd have them float back into the past. And then they would be floating over an event, not always in an event because they're observing it. And and normally especially in the early days. Obviously, people normally don't seek healing unless there's something, wrong. I mean, we don't normally do proactive things, unfortunately. So a lot of these things they would see would be, where are you? Well, I'm floating over a battle, or there's a funeral, or someone's sick and about to die. It's usually pretty tragic stuff. And we would just say, okay, great. Look, notice who's there, and then just tell me if you see or sense your ancestor. And they'd be like, whoa, there's my 5 times great grandfather down there. Okay, great. Let's just send light to your grandfather or whoever it is. And let's say it's a battle, for example. Let's just send some light to all who are involved in this battle. And we would just sit there and send energy to it until there's a shift in the energy. And I say, okay, let me just know, we're going to send this love and light, and we're going to do this until this starts to feel a little bit better. Because let's face it, we're not going to turn a cartwheel and jump for joy over a battle or a death or something. But could we make the energy around it feel just slightly less heavy? And then once they sense that, then I have their mother or father, or whichever parent they're working on is with them. We notice that they start to feel lighter. And then we bring that energy into the person who's receiving that. And then we can travel forward through time, send the light to people who are currently alive, and then even, send that or project that out into the future to the future generations. And the person would come back saying, wow, I feel a lot better. And so this was something that I was doing, again, really very rarely back in the early 2000s when I got the vibes that we needed to do it. And then I was writing books for Llewellyn, and they said, hey, could you write something else for us? And I said, well, I've got this weird thing that's been sitting in the drawer. Why don't I write about that? And so it came out in 2021. But this is, as you well know, the Navajo people and other beautiful cultures around the world have known all along that we need to be paying attention to our ancestors. And the rest of us, I guess, are just waking up to this. But there's been a global phenomenon, which the Western world is finally waking up to the importance of this work. And so this book kind of just hit a wave that I guess was already going on. I guess it was an idea that came about a long time ago whose time has finally come here. And so the new book is just continuing those practices and really expanding the work that is, so much a part of your beautiful culture. So anyway.
Absolutely. I love that, because there is a saying within a lot of North American Indigenous people, 7 generations back, 7 generations forward. And so it's kind of like that's what you're talking about. And, for me, it's really interesting because I'm seeing this wave that you were speaking about healing the generations. Where I'm seeing it as a spiritual person is a lot of people are saying, I am going to be the one that breaks this family curse, or I'm going to be the one it stops with me. And there's a lot of people like that. Have you noticed that that's coming about too? These
I really
people.
have, because when the Heal Your Ancestors to Heal Your Life came out, I did a program with the Shift Network. And so all the people there, I mean, I'm not going to say every single one of them, but, they were definitely expressing that, saying, look, I'm here. This is my purpose. This is
Yeah.
one of my major things that I'm here to do, is just to get this going and heal these ancestors
Yeah.
and break the pattern, like you said, whether it's just trauma, curses, etc. I had written an early book about curses also. So this just plays right into that. I sent out an email many years ago saying, hey, are you blessed or are you cursed? I was kind of joking. I think I'm the luckiest person alive. I think that I'm so fortunate. I'm so grateful. And I started getting a lot of emails from people, some of whom, hello, I had been best friends with for years. They never told me this before. They thought they were cursed. And they were telling me this whole dissertation about, the 5 generations or whatever, 7 generations back and all these details. And I was like, I became fascinated by this. And so I started trying to develop other techniques to help people who believe they're cursed. I mean, I think there's energy around that, obviously, but can we obviously change the way we're thinking, send some different energy into things, and then move forward and create what we want? And so this is kind of also another thing that is definitely related, as you've mentioned, to this topic as well.
I love it. So, listeners, watchers, pastlifelady.com to find out all of the books. In looking at and going through the ancestral healing, this energy healing, what I really enjoy about this is it's not just oh, I'm going to get schooled on how I should think. You actually go, and here is a journal prompt, and here is an exercise, and here you're putting us into action. And I think that that's really beautiful because there is that aspect of that you just mentioned about, oh, the Western mind is beginning to wake up to the concepts of generational healing and this whole, regression, um, and this idea that, well, you don't have to just read about it. You get to do it too, people. And this is going to be available, like I said, coming out June 8th, 2024. Um, so on that note, would you give us like a little example of what this movement, exercise, techniques, like to just kind of give us a taste of what to expect when they pick up your book?
A minute ago, I mentioned that, in the first book, it's talking a lot about the fact that most of these ancestral journeys might be of a darker nature. They might be, depressing. I don't want to say they're depressing, but, it just is what it is. It's not a happy thing. So in this book, there's more genealogical regressions, but we're expanding the ability to say, guess what? Trauma, okay, fine. Curses, fine. But guess what? Your ancestors gave you blessings and gifts. And we should be thankful that they walked that path before we ever got here, because you have to say, oh my gosh, how do these people even survive some of the things they went through? And so let's think about the gifts, the talents, the skills, the abilities. These are the same things that people look at in past life regression as well. You can find gifts and talents and things that you had in past life, but you can definitely pick them up from your ancestors because they're in your DNA. So which ones perhaps maybe you've known about, maybe you weren't aware of? Can you discover some new ones and just expand on those? So just expanding the capability of what that technique can do. And then we get into some movement exercises to start getting in touch with the fact that in the second half of the book is devoted to what I'm calling ancestral energy healing, where I'm going to show readers how to realize that, yes, your ancestors are in your DNA. And so we can actually send light to specific parts of the body with mother or father's lineage in mind and start feeling actual sensations in the body as we help release any stuck energy and just raise the vibrational frequency around different things. So I've added some very simple movement exercises. I'm not a yoga teacher. Thank you. There's many good ones out there, but just to get some movement going as we're breathing and we're getting into getting in touch with those things. And then I show people some very specific techniques on how to do this themselves.
I love that. I love that because, the way that I like to look at it is we stand on the shoulders of our ancestors, and we need to live a life to become an ancestor, And so I think in those terms a lot. And so when you say they gave us blessings too, I'm like, yes. And then, there is a frame of mind of, a worldview or an approach to go, it was all trauma. I don't want to connect. They were horrible, all of those painful things. But at the end of the day, like you said, this is the ancestors embodied right here. This nose, these eyes, this bloodline. And so when you don't help heal, this is my opinion, if you don't help heal that, then something here hurts too. What do you think about that? Like physically?
I completely and 100% totally agree with everything you are saying. This is exactly true. When you disown something, then it wreaks havoc on you. I mean, how can you disown the people who are actually physically a part of your body? It's one thing to say, yes, we maybe lived in some past lives before, but here, these are real flesh and blood individuals who you are related to, and their DNA is in your body. And so you have to look at the bright side and the honoring, as you mentioned, and realize that the more light you can send to them, rather than just saying, I don't want anything to do with this, the more of that pushing away that happens. I think this is actually creating, more of what we don't want. Whereas if we just start to embrace it, there's a real healing that could happen.
I mean, in just considering that, it's just, it blows my mind. You know, I have a little story I want to share with you. When I was about 10 years old, I had this great fear of the concept of tomorrow. I was so afraid of tomorrow that I would cry myself to sleep and I wouldn't want to go to sleep. And I was 10 years old and I don't know where this came from. But then one time I just started kind of breathing and settling myself down. And I had this vision that this warm woman or presence came to me and she held me and she said, "Are you afraid of today?" I said, "Never." And she said, "It's always today. The only reason why you're afraid of tomorrow is because you're tired. But once you wake up, you'll be back in today." And it broke. And I was like, wow. So then, fast forward, late 30s, I go into a guided meditation where I see this 10-year-old me laying there on a bed. And I'm like, oh, I know what to say. So I was the one that came up to me later in life and comforted that. What do you think about that concept?
I completely agree with that as well. I'm very interested in the guidance, the divine guidance that we all have if we can, quiet ourselves enough to listen to it. And it has, we could say, well, maybe we have angels, we have our deceased relatives, we have our ancestors. But what if, yes, sometimes the person comforting us is ourselves? Yes.
Yeah.
You have things in life like the story you described. Something that happened as a child has come back around as an adult now. And I've had things like that too. You think, whoa, wait a minute. This moment, like a deja vu, you feel like it's very familiar. And you realize that something had told me about this moment that I'm now having. I've had a lot more of that than ever before, like in the last year, just things that have happened that I thought about many, many years ago that are kind of coming to pass now. And it's really weird. It's as though someone was here comforting, whispering in our ear. Was it ourselves? I believe it's certainly possible. Could it be our ancestors? It could be. A little bit of both, maybe. I don't know, but I definitely believe in that.
I think I just find that so empowering too. Just listeners, the concept of going back into your past and talking with your inner child and all of that is just so amazing. Another thing that I'm thinking about is when I look at the ancestral lineage, I must consider what resources they had, what they went through, and what societal things told them, and the strength that they had. And that's kind of where I start when I start understanding and forgiveness. You talk about forgiveness in the book, and then going, oh, that was actually normalized behavior back then. I'm not saying it was right or healthy, but it was widespread and not talked about or whatever the case may be. So kind of going from a position of actually looking at, well, the battlefield, and what they were actually enduring, and maybe that they were starving or they were defending their home, or all of these different things that we might not consider in today's societal, living in Texas or Colorado or California, that it's like, whoa, those were difficult societal changes. They had different societal norms, they were of a different generation, and approaching it from that way, and then moving through some forgiveness. I love that you said that they're observers and they're hovering above, because that's less traumatic than actually going into the battlefield. And so the last question that I have for you, because I'm fascinated, I could talk for a long time, but at the end, you do talk about rewriting your story, rewriting the energy, rewriting history, changing it. What is, talk a little bit about that, the rewriting of things so that we can live that healthy life.
Yeah, you're bringing up such a fantastic point here about the idea of extending grace to those who have come before us, because, like you said, Is it anything we're going to accept now? Of course not. But even in very ancient times, you think about people just out there, in the middle of nowhere, just trying to hunt or something and try to survive the elements and things. I mean, and I really have always believed that most people are actually doing the best they can at the moment, like you said, whether it's because of the society, whether it's the circumstance, whether they just don't know any better, et cetera, et cetera. So we can be traumatized by those things, or we can just say, hey, let's extend some grace, And so when we're in that part of the book where we're inviting people to say, okay, maybe we've had an inner dialogue with ourselves about the trauma and the, destitution or whatever it is, can we rewrite something as if, and live as if we would prefer to see things, as if we would like how we would like to see them, let's say, projected out into the future and into the today, which I love. Oh my gosh, I love that story. So important. Today, this is what we have. So how can I bring more presence and peace into today? And if I was writing a story today, to make myself feel happier and to tell myself maybe happier things about the potential gifts and talents and potential loving intentions of my ancestors, what would that actually look like or sound like? And we go through some exercises just to write it out. Why not? People say, well, that's not real, or we could get into that science fiction paradigm. We can't go back and change the past. We can change the present, though, and how we feel about it, And so there's just some gentle exercises to do that.
I love that, because it's not that we're necessarily changing the past. It's more or less changing our perception of how we are seeing the past, with more healing energy and more of that energy. And it's kind of like, I was doing some writing, and I was like, yes, I could take the viewpoint of the victim. I could take the viewpoint of a little bit more controlled yet defensive aspect of self. And if you look at my life, you'd be like, yeah, I get it. I get it. But I decide to take the position of looking at my life as a multitude of opportunities to learn, grow, and self develop, and then share with others and connect. So, on that note, it really is, you're not like, oh, I'm just going to cut everything bad out of the past. You're going to say, no, I'm going to send love, I'm going to send healing, and I'm going to change my perception. Is that are we flowing on the same vibe here?
We're totally flowing on the vibe. You are totally flowing on my vibe. I'm telling you that. Because, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, things happen. They're not pleasant. But don't we, hopefully, like you said, we have a choice. We can just wallow in it. We could be a victim, or we could say, you know what, I did learn some good things about that, and we could become a better person, a more compassionate person who can help others who maybe are navigating that same challenge that went through. We're here to evolve and learn, and it's not always pleasant, but if you can see the silver lining on the cloud, it's all there.
So once again, listeners, new book coming out, also Ancestral Energy Healing. It is a guidebook. If your ancestors have been calling you, you might want to check this out. Or, a lot of people are afraid to do ancestral work because of the different things that, Dr. Shelley was sharing. And trust me, we all have those painful stories that we think are only ours, but it actually is a lot. And if you want to heal that energy in order to live a better life here, even just in your blood, in your heart, in your liver, in your beingness, to be able to go, I love my bloodline. I love the fact that my nose looks like this. I love the fact that my cheekbones are like this, and that self-empowerment, and then say, thank you, ancestors, for these are the blessings that you gave to me. And I also send you healing because I love who I am, and I wouldn't be here without you. So anyway, Shelley, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This has been fantastic. I have loved our conversation, and I'm just wishing you all continued success. And I love your show. So happy
Thank
you're doing
you.
this.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So thank you for listening and or watching on YouTube to another episode of Belief, Being, and Beyond with your host, Granddaughter Crow. And please like, subscribe, share with people that you think might want to hear this information. Until we see you next time or hear you next time, listeners, see you on the flippity flip.